Barclays. The company will be selling a 7% stake in Johannesburg-based Barclays Africa Group on the 5th of December. Now, this will be the latest and likely the last in a series of such sales, and it ends more than 90 years as a major presence on the continent. Barclays says its stake in the African division will now fall to about 14.9% once this transaction is complete. That represents its desired long-term goal to reduce its stake in its African operations. No further sales are planned, especially at this point. The British bank first announced way back in March 2016 that it would be selling most of its then 62% stake in Barclays Africa Group over 2 to 3 years as the bank refocused its strategy not just on the United States and Britain but also on its investment banking division. Shares in Barclays Africa have gone up by nearly 10% since Barclays announced it would sell the unit. So then, where then does this leave Barclays PLC? Let's find out. Natalie Powell joins us now live from London with more data on this. Natalie, do we know the identity of the buyer, this latest chunk of 7% of Barclays Africa Group?
Well, as you've said, this is expected to be Barclays' last sell-off, really, reducing its stake in Barclays Africa Group to just 14.9%. It is reported that it is going to sell another 7% to the PIC, the Public Investments Corporation. And, of course, in addition to that, we're expecting the reports are, shall I say, that 136 rands per share is the asking price. That's around about $10 per share. We're also told that 1.5% of Barclays shares will go into the Black Empowerment Scheme. That was, of course, set up by the UK parent company. But, of course, this is all really down to now to the regulatory approval. But if that goes ahead, we are expecting some kind of transaction on the 5th of December.
Indeed. So for some markets, the Barclays brand will remain in use until around mid-2020. But at this point, do we know what happens after that to the use of the Barclays brand in the 10-plus countries it operates in here in Africa? Or is that a decision that's going to be made at country level?
Well, Barclays is saying that any further announcements will be made in due course. Of course, prior to it becoming the Barclays Africa Group, it was known as the ABSA Group Limited. So potentially we may see a return of that name. Presumably, though, it will really be up to the shareholders to decide on that branding. It has been fairly beneficial, though, that it's had this UK parent company, particularly in South Africa. We know, of course, that the ABSA Bank has benefited from having the same credit rating of the UK parent company, and recently Standard & Poor's downgraded 5 South African banks, ABSA being one of them, but it wasn't hit as hard as the other 4 banks on that list. So ABSA's credit rating went from AA to AA-, the others from BB plus to BB. Now, of course, though, this is being seen as a very positive step forward, that this will bring in essentially a new era for a standalone pan-African financial service operation.
Indeed. One last question for you, Natalie. Now that Barclays has basically pruned its liabilities in Africa, what business lines and geographic territories will management now be focusing on over the medium term?
Well, of course, this is not really a big surprise. We knew that when Jess Staley took up the reins of Barclays back in 2016, that he made this a really key announcement back in March 2016 that Barclays would reduce its stake in the BAG to under 50%. It looks like that's now going to stand at just 14.9%, and the reasons for doing so was to increase its core capital, which at the time was lagging behind many of its competitors, but also to focus its business operations in the UK and in the US. So it's a really just a change of strategy from Barclays, with a new CEO coming in back in 2016, and that's really what we're seeing taking place.
Indeed. We'll leave it there for the time being. Natalie Powell in London. Thank you.